Hey guys, it's David. So, I promised I would never do a video from my car because it looks cheap, and in addition to looking cheap, there's never good lighting, there's always distraction, and the sound quality is awful. But I thought I'd make this video because I am charging my vehicle in Mount Juliet, and I have about 30 minutes to burn, and the results for the Democratic primary for Nevada are in, and Joe Biden has won 112,414 votes with 91% of the votes in. The nearest candidate is Marina, and she has 3%. And the thing is that it's, sorry, Marianne. The thing is that it's so difficult for me to put my head around the idea that people are actually voting for this guy, considering crime is at an all-time high. Poor people are the most affected. Even here in Nashville, I was talking to a mother who we were having a conversation yesterday, and she said that her son was shot and killed getting off of a Greyhound bus in downtown Nashville. I've seen people defecating on the streets in downtown Nashville. There was this guy 2 nights ago at my local Steak and Shake when I was driving by at like midnight, and he was wielding an axe. So everything you've seen in the Joker movie 2019 is just like happening in real life. So I always had this theory that the people who are actually voting for these policies are the people who are not affected by them. People in gated houses, mansions, like people like Bill Maher, who are, hundreds of millions of dollars. They don't really care if the groceries goes up by like, I don't know, $10. But in addition to that, I was going to put on my personal Facebook I was going to call it the Taco Bell Index, because when you look at the item menus between 2009 and 2024, the prices have 4x'd and income has only gone up by like 30%. So basically, it's like that all across the board. Speaking of the Steak and Shake, it's basically like they always had the 4 meals under $4. $4 for a meal. Decent. In 2020, it went to $4.44, and now it's $5.29. So roughly about a 30% increase. So the thing about inflation, they cannot tamp it. They cannot taper it down. Biden says inflation's over, and it's still raising, because if inflation was over, prices would stabilize, but they're still going up. So what that shows is he's still printing. He's still bringing a deficit, putting money everywhere else except America. The Build Back Better plan's a joke. I mean, you just come here to Nashville, and there are potholes so big that my Tesla, when you're driving, it recognizes it as a car in front of you, and then it automatically brakes. So how in the world can you say the Build Back Better plan is working when we're funding everyone but ourselves? And liberals have always been the appeasist. They appease everyone else in the world, and that was the biggest problem with Obama. He sent so much money overseas and never came down. And in the same hand, they say that trickle-down economics doesn't work. So if you pay off all of our enemies and allies through economic forms, through buying their oil, say like, hey, please don't attack us. And that's really what it was. When Obama actually sent the plane with billions of dollars to Iran, for some hostages, like in cash, that was like, oh, please don't attack us. We really love our sovereignty, and we really don't want a war. So we're just going to, bribe you with this money, get back some hostages. It's never fair. And the whole thing about George W. Bush is he says we will never negotiate with terrorists. And you have the Bidens and the Obamas of the world actually negotiating with terrorists. And it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure this stuff out. But that's when it goes back to the 112,000 people who are voting for Biden in Nevada. one of the freest states of the union that people have fled from California to get to. Um, it blows my mind that people have so much devotion to their party when our country's going bankrupt, which everything is taxpayer funded. So we're going to have to pay for it eventually. And it's probably going to come at great cost to our quality of life. Not only that, groceries are not only more expensive, but the quality's worse. Because these companies don't want to raise their prices, so instead they get cheaper ingredients, cheaper packaging. Half the stuff you buy is ruined before you even bring it home and open it up. And the whole thing about commerce being supply and demand, that works, but with inflation, everyone is at an all-time high in debt. So over $1 trillion in credit card debt. Sorry, consumer credit card debt. So traditionally, credit cards were only used when there were something that you had, like an emergency, and then you had to pay it back with interest. But now people are living off their credit cards just because they're not prepared for the inflation and wages are stagnant. So they're not doing it to splurge, like go on a vacation to Disneyland. They're doing it to buy groceries. And that's why I really believe the black vote is going to turn from the Democrats to the Republicans in 2020, because you cannot fool people who are living paycheck to paycheck. When you go to the store and you see eggs for $8 and bread for $5.99, and Democrats are saying, "Oh, our wages are at an all-time high. The stock market is at an all-time high," which it's not. We're in a recession. That's all just virtue signaling, basically, to the left, saying we're in a good spot, and it's telling minorities that we're in a good spot when they know we are not. You cannot go and spend $14 on bread and eggs when you're making $15 an hour and you're taxed on that $15 an hour. So when you bring it home, it's really like $14.61. And then when you go and you buy those bread and eggs, you're taxed $2 on that because they raised taxes to New York's tax rate. So in 2020, I was in New York City for a month, and it blew my mind that the food tax there was 9.5% after living in Florida where it was 7.20%. It's like, I was like, man, this is crazy. So you go and you buy like a Monster energy drink and you're taxed like so freaking much. And I was like, man, well, at least it keeps the infrastructure of the city going. But they put those policies in places like Tennessee where the infrastructure sucks. And everything's for profit, because we're in America. So we're in a meritocracy, and we're also a capitalist country. So Tesla, for instance, they could choose to make the chargers free for everyone, but it would cost money because it's like $500,000 to install these charger stations, and they got to make it back somehow. So the government can lie to their base all they want and say that the economy is good. We've been in a recession since 2022. I studied stockbroking, the Series 7, and yeah, the 2 negative quarters is a recession technically, and it's always been that way since we started keeping track. So you can't have a president saying, well, we're not in a recession, just so he can signal to his base the times are good. Go on vacation, enjoy these food stamps so you don't have to participate in the economy. You're a recipient of benefits that someone else worked for. And I say that because I've spoken to people all the way back. See that camera? That's why I don't like. Sorry for the camera wobbling. That's why I don't like recording in the car. But anyways, all the way back in 2016, 17, 18, there were people in Florida, which I think are scum of the earth, who don't work because they are afraid they're going to lose their social benefits, like food stamps. So they choose to live with their parents, or they choose to live in a cohabitation with 7 people, which is basically a commune, and everyone's receiving food stamps, and they pull it in and they use those food stamps. And then whatever they have left over, they sell and they buy drugs. That's basically what happens when you get 7 roommates and no one works. There's a lot of money coming into the house, probably like $1,200 in benefits. And they sell those food stamps for cash or drugs or guns or whatever. It happens every day. So if you're wondering where all the government's money going, that is where it's going. And it's a real shame. We live in a country that if you want to accomplish something in your life, you have to work for it. And when you work for it, which I know, a lot of people are allergic to work these days, when you work for it, you don't owe anyone anything except the government and taxes. It's your money. So what happens when Democrats come in and they take money from the middle class? It decentivizes work. And when work is decentivized, you cannot continue to become successful. I'm telling you this because if you had $10,000 in the bank in 2020 and this 40% inflation, it's probably more like 59% in some parts of the country, comes in, you lose about half of your buying power. I'm telling you, $10,000 cannot buy what it did in 2020. Have you looked at used cars lately? And this is not just like a video complaining about prices, but it's not stopping. So it kind of is. It's like the whole idea that everything that comes out of the White House is written by Joe Biden's staff, that inflation's down. It's not down. It's not at 2% a year. It's at 2% a month. And you take 2% a month times 12, that's 24% inflation a year. The only person who can stop this inflation is someone like President Trump, who would come and cut taxes, bring money back into the people's hands instead of the government, reduce fuel prices. Another thing, I was at Sam's Club the other day, and every case of everything was $2 cheaper because gas in Nashville is also a couple dollars cheaper because we're heading into an election season, and they always try to, how would you say, they try to court the voters by lowering gas prices and thinking it'll fool them into voting Democrat. But the truth is, the Democrats do have their finger on the gas nozzle, and they could lower the prices anytime they want by local drilling or buying cheaper oil. It's all strategic. Everyone knows that during the 2020 election and the presidential debate, Joe Biden said that he was going to basically veer away from the gas and oil industry. But it's been very difficult, as you know, for all of us, because when the prices of gas is high, so are the prices in the store. And can you imagine if a president like Trump comes in and starts drilling and we get $1.50 oil again? Like when you fill up your tank, it's like, less than $20. What that will do is all of these shippers who are spending $40,000 a week on fuel, they're going to start spending $20,000 or $30,000 a week on fuel, and all of that savings goes into the stores so that the stores can lower the prices. And if you think that corporate greed is why these stores are raising your prices, you are completely wrong, because the consumer price index shows that there's only so much that the consumer is willing to pay for a price, and when they stop paying that price, the seller of that item is forced to lower it to get more consumers interested. So you cannot put a 5-hour energy, for instance, has always been $2. Then it went to $2.50, then $3, and now it's nearing $4, $5 in some stores. Well, I went to the store where they put all the 5-hour energy out for $1, and they said it was overstocked. But in reality, when you have too much inventory and you can't move it, and people aren't willing to spend $5, you have to understand that's like 20 minutes of work for one 5-hour energy. They're going to not buy the product, and this is how the economy is supposed to work before the inflation messed it up. They're not going to buy the product. They're going to wait and wait and wait and go and find a cheaper alternative until that price is down. And when the price is down, they will buy the goods and services that are provided to them. And that's how the consumer price index works. So another thing Democrats say is like, oh, corporate greed is what, everyone's making record profits. And no, they're not making record profits. They're making the same profit, but it looks higher on paper because of inflation, because there's more money in the market. Like Walmart, Dollar General, Target, all these stores are not making record profit. They're making the same profit, but their charts look higher because everything's up 30-40%. And it will show that their earnings are up 30 or 40% as well. If the stock market is up 30 or 40%, it could very, very well be that there's more money in the system chasing fewer stocks. And so everything can be manipulated to a talking point. But luckily, we have a Democratic president who can barely talk. And I really think that people's emotions are affected by it. and that they are going to listen to his talk and they will listen to his speeches and listen to the debate, know that what he's saying is false because they feel it in their wallet, and that they will vote for someone else. And yeah, man, I hope that if Robert F. Kennedy actually gets votes that's from Democrats, I don't think he's going to pull off the lead, but people are smart. And I know for a fact I like having money to put into savings after my paycheck. A lot of people are the same way. So let me know what you guys think. Who do you think is going to win the Republican primary that's happening and taking place today in Nevada? Results should be in around 9:40. So tonight I'm going to do a recap. I hope you have a great day. Welcome to another episode of Right Politics.